Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. This is the 2017 semester, and this is March 24th. This is the third lesson of this particular semester, of this particular year. Okay, and what we're talking about, what I'm speaking about today, is technology, artificial intelligence, and the genetic backstory of basically why we are in the position of requiring a tool such as the Flying Rainbow Lasagna in order to transcend our present level of limitations. So what are those present levels of limitations? Like Aurora, what's wrong with us? Everything is fine. Everything is not fine, because we are right now, this physical body that we are experiencing is analogous to a domesticated dog, as opposed to our wild, undomesticated format, which would be analogous to a wolf. And a wolf does not require a master. It is free to run around wherever it wants to, eat whatever it wants to, and it doesn't require something to brush its hair and get the fleas off. Like, it is quite capable of taking care of itself. It doesn't need a human master. But dogs are different. Dogs have been genetically altered. That's what the domestication process is. And they are now in a relationship, in a cooperative relationship with humanity. And the whole point of that is that through being in that cooperative relationship with humanity and being genetically altered, dogs have lost some of their freedom and some of their self-determination. So a dog isn't allowed to just go out and eat whatever it wants. It has to ask for permission from its master. Or it eats, what the master feeds it out of a can of dog food. And dogs are on a leash. So I'm trying to tell you, your mind is domesticated. Your mind is on a leash. That the whole process of changing from being a wild, undomesticated human to being a human that requires an external authority figure to tell it what to do and where to go is what we are rectifying and transcending with the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. And all of this has to do with technology, and all of this has to do with the occupiers of the interstices. So in previous years, I started doing this class in 2013. And that first semester, what I did was I created like a 20 lesson class, and I put all this information at the very end, lesson 18, after many months of creating like a rapport with all the people in the class and getting everyone to understand about unconditional love and to cultivate their higher faculties, so that when we would get to this information, it would not be emotionally perturbing, because I'm not just telling you these things so that you can feel angry or upset or want to lash out. That's not responsible of me. So that's the whole point of, it's also why I tend not to use biblical literalist terms like angels and demons. I'll say, oh, occupiers of the interstices. And I'm not a demonic apologist. So I'm not a transhumanist, and I'm not a demonic apologist, meaning I am not telling you this backstory so that you're like, oh, poor them, I pity them, they can't be any different, I therefore accept their behavior. No, that's not what I'm doing at all. I'm giving you the backstory that you need to understand your present position of difficulty and being able to transcend it. So I'm going to go into the whiteboard so that I can draw my little drawings, beginning with the time field. Okay, so I draw this in almost every class. This is the time vortex, and this is a simplified version because it is actually a three-dimensional, holding this up, this is actually a three-dimensional vortex, but we're simplifying in this drawing. And you can see, if we say this layer here is year 0 and time moves forward along this axis, if you are born here and you move upward in these little dots and you reach that, this is a flowing membrane that flows in that direction, and I call it the flowing membrane of death. So the basic understanding here is that we derive from the source. This is the 0th dimension, and we are emanated into reality, and then we're supposed to return back to the source. Like, this is what we're supposed to do, return back to the source. But instead, what we end up doing, instead of that direct action, is circulating all the way around through all of these possible iterations until we finally get to this position that is the path of least likelihood that leads us back to the source. It's really the path of infinity. So, but with this, what I'm trying to show you here is the idea that depending upon your orientation, changing colors here, if you are oriented like this, you're going in the wrong direction, you are going to hit this membrane of death. But if you are oriented like this, then you are going in the right direction and you are not going to hit the membrane of death. What is this membrane of death? This is a membrane between worlds. So we've got what's going on here in this area of reality. And then we've got what's going on here in this area of reality. And this membrane is supposed to be the boundary between those two areas of consciousness or levels of experience or dimensions or however you would like to explain it. And this is not meant to be a place where you live permanently. It's supposed to be like a transit place, a hallway between different rooms of the house. But what has happened is there are occupiers of the interstices. There are beings that live here in this membrane. And when your consciousness dies, when you reach this membrane, you're not supposed to, but when you reach this membrane, you try to, go through here, what happens is you get stuck and you interact with all of these other stuck consciousnesses. They're like the fatty deposits lining the arteries of the cosmos, all right? And let me just drink a little bit of juice here and then we'll go further. Where did those consciousnesses come from? Why are they stuck there? That was not the original plan or musical score of the cosmos created by the great composer. That's not how everything was designed. So I'll go into first the intention of how everything was designed. We were designed to have physical bodies that are a physical manifestation of light, like light that coalesces and gets squashed together to the point where it is now solid matter. But we were never supposed to be separated from that network of light and that network of consciousness. I'm literally pointing at the sun right now that just came out from behind the clouds. We were supposed to come here, emanated from the sun, the source, the stellar network, the zeroth dimension, and come here and coalesce into a form of matter, but not be cut off. We're supposed to still send real-time broadcasts, like we are the sensory apparatus of a much larger entity saying, hey, this is what we're experiencing here in this realm, all right? And the whole idea is that we are emanated on a bridge of love. So now I'm going to get into the backstory, and I also got to just be aware of the time because I try to keep these recordings to about 1 hour. That's how many gigabytes I'm able to comfortably do. So now let's do those beings who emanated themselves not on a bridge of love. So once again, this is the source or that central convergence point at the center of this sculpture. It's the zeroth dimension. It is the origin and destination of everything. And we are supposed to emanate out from the source, become a whole bunch of physical matter called a body over here, and then of course transmit our energy back to the source, all right? And this this source, this is like, let me just erase. Oops. This source is the great conductor, the great composer, and it tells you, tap, 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 when to play, when to go out. Here is a different color. Like, tap, 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 it's time for you to be emanated. And then if you listen, you are emanated, and you're emanated on a bridge of love. And by that, I mean that it's not like your consciousness is downloaded to a hard drive and then you are installed into a cyborg. That's not what happens. What happens is there's a womb and you begin to develop, an actual person in the womb, and you begin to transfer your consciousness into that body that is developing. This is called a bridge of love. This is what I mean by bridge of love. Okay, so that's the way you're supposed to do it, right? Through a bridge of love, you transfer your consciousness into an organic body. And the whole point of that is that you must conform to the music. That music is sound waves and harmonic patterns, and that when we are alive, like this shows it pretty well, and I'll show you another picture of chakras. When you are alive, you are in harmonic patterns. Let me pull up a picture of what I'm talking about here. I know, I have to do a little bit of scrolling, and I'm sure I'm making funny, squinty faces while I'm doing this. Here, this is a picture of the chakras on your body. And these are all in wonderful harmonic proportions. And in order to be alive, to have a body that is made out of cells, that has a metabolism, that can walk and talk like my body is walking and talking, in order to be alive, you have to conform to this pattern, which is like the music. Let's play a nicer note. It's like the music of the cosmos. And if you don't conform to that music, if you play notes like that instead, then what happens is you die. Notes like this would be like if you take all the blood out of the body and no longer have it circulating in your body, or if you no longer give the body oxygen to metabolize. Like there are all sorts of different ways of going like it with the physical body. And all of that is meant to understand we are part of a symphony of consciousness. And if you don't play the right notes, you don't get to be in the symphony. Well, there were some beings a long, long time ago that said, screw that, we want to be in the symphony anyway. We are going to do whatever the F we want. And ordinarily, I'm all about being an individual and being self-directed and choosing your own path. But in this case, it was very harmful and destructive that there were a group of beings that chose to emanate themselves not on a bridge of love, but into a bridge of an artificial container that we could call technology. So I'm just drawing it here as if it is like a box, as opposed to a anthropomorphic form, which I would say this over here, that is like if you are on a bridge of love, you are emanated into an actual living container. But if you're not on a bridge of love, then you emanate into a type of cyborg container or an artificial container. This technology would not have to be in existence if those beings were willing to transmit their consciousness on a bridge of love. So all of this is about beings that said, we don't want to eat love. You and I eat love. That is what food is. That is what the eating of light with intermediaries like plants and animals, that's what that is. You're eating love, and your metabolism is part of love. But the beings that did this over here with technology, they did not want to be tied down to the limitations of and constraints of having to work with the notes of the great composer and to be limited by the world of love. And so they decided to do their own thing. And it's just not cool, because when you do your own thing in the symphony, it affects the entire symphony. So what these beings did first, they're like, oh, I'm going to transfer my consciousness into here. Let's say that's their consciousness, is that big dot. And then the problem and the challenge is that they did not have access to life force energy. Life force energy is all about love. Like life force energy is the stuff that makes the cells of your body stay alive. It is what feeds the metabolism of your physical body. And this has everything to do with the dough of the raw materials of reality. Where does the time field come from? I hope I'm not annoying you by jumping back and forth from my face to the whiteboard, but I do that because I want you to see me while I'm speaking, but then also speak with pictures. So where did this come from? And I'm just drinking a little bit of juice here. Higher faculties. Let's say this is you. And you are supposed to emanate all of this lovely, I'm making it green. This is dough. These are your prayers. These are your deep inner desires. And these are higher dimensional waveforms. Now we need to get into higher dimensions. Hold on a second. You're emitting higher dimensional waveforms. Let's talk about the dimensions first. This dot, this is the 0th dimension. It is 0 not because it is less valuable than other dimensions, but because it requires 0 amount of information to describe the position of anything there. It's all there. It's the 0th dimension. And that's also analogous to the source. The most amazing leap was when the source thought, what would happen if there was something that was me, but that wasn't with me? And that created the 1st dimension. A dot, any place else other than the 1st dot, connected by a line of dots, and it's the 1st dimension. This is all preparation so that you can understand where we're going with this. If we line up many one-dimensional lines next to one another, we get a plane, and that's the 2nd dimension. And then if I line up many planes on top of one another, then I get a cube, which is the 3rd dimension. These are all very rudimentary looking cubes, but you kind of get the impression of what I'm doing there. And then what is the 4th dimension? The 4th dimension is a line of cubes. This is one moment. And this is another moment, and this is another moment, and this is another moment, and this is another moment. So we started this class at 2:15, but we are not in our bodies of 2:15. We are not in our bodies of 2:16. We are in our bodies of whatever, 2:25. We have transferred our consciousness. Let's say the dot of our consciousness has transferred. First, it was in this box. Then it moved to this box. Then the next minute it moved to this box. Then the next minute it moved to this box. And then it moved to this box. That is our trajectory through time. That is how we navigate the time field. If we were undomesticated wolves, we would not require any intermediaries to be able to create and navigate the time field. This is all about, where do these possibilities and probabilities, where do they come from? Who writes the script? This is like, say that these lines here, these are all possibilities. How are they formed? How were they made? How are these timelines made? This is all about reality creation. So let's talk about early 20th century physicists, Einstein and all of his friends, and the issue of observership, quantum observership. So before Einstein, before Einstein, there was Newton, but before Newton, there was just a lot of superstition, and people were like, Dark Ages, not that good. So Newton was a step up from there, because he was like, let's just look at the world with our 5 physical senses and describe the physical world. This is physics. It describes the laws of the physical world, all right? And then in the early 20th century, Einstein came along and he's like, wait, I want to describe the physical world, but I want to describe it using an understanding of matter at a very, very, very tiny level. And this is at the quantum level. And Einstein started to get everyone to understand that the physical world is not separate from your mind, that the physical world responds to and is affected by your mind. This is quantum observership. So let's talk about this. Let's say this is an eyeball. I'm drawing a big giant eyeball in profile over here. Like, here's the middle of your eye. And this is like an oven. And I keep using that analogy. Oh, I didn't get to the 5th dimension. These are the uncollapsed waveforms, the possibilities and probabilities of the higher dimensional world, 5th dimension and higher. And this is quantum observership. These are the ovens in front of your eyes, like I'm showing, like rays of heat shooting out from your eyes. And when these red rays hit these uncollapsed waveforms, what happens is these waveforms actually become train cars of reality that you can occupy and experience, all right? And it is this action, this action of having observership that does that. That is the creative act that you do as a love-based being that is so very special, that the technology-based beings cannot do. This is big. I'm trying to tell you, your creative life force energy, it's not just what one uses, what living beings use in order to procreate. It's not just about the sperm and the ovum coming together and making a new baby. And it's also that energy is not just for cellular reproduction, like, oh, I scratched off some of the cells of my face, and so now my body is going to grow new cells and replace the cells that I've lost. It's not just the energy that is used for that, that the creative life force energy is actually the energy that is the ovens in front of your eyes in terms of quantum observership, taking the world that is an uncollapsed sea of possibilities and turning it into a world that you can actually experience and inhabit, that is shaped like the time field, that is shaped like this, with all of these different, every single one of these twigs is a possible timeline or a version of your life. And of course, this is the most important and central timeline, and the one that you're always trying to hit and converge upon, because that is the one, just changing colors here, that exits this little gap. It should be a tiny little gap that is the size of one possibility, and that's the wormhole, and that's how you get out of here. So basically, this is all about ascension as opposed to death. I'm trying to tell you, before our planet was invaded about 10, 20,000 years ago, the bad news is your planet was invaded. The good news is we're now ready to rectify the situation. The planet was invaded about 10 or 20,000 years ago. And what that did was It transformed humans from having access to their higher faculties to no longer having access to their higher faculties. So we were all created with the intention of being able to see through time, to be able to navigate the time field, to be able to tell, am I going in the right direction? Am I going in the wrong direction? Like, am I nice and straight up and down where I'm supposed to be going? Or am I tilted a little bit in the wrong way? And so the whole idea is we were given higher faculties in order to be able to navigate the time field effectively. And those higher faculties are also part of our co-creative capacity to make reality. So contrast this with earth religion that states there is an externalized God and that you are fated or destined to experience what that God has scripted into your life. That's really, really different than the intended format of our cosmic experience. We were supposed to be able to, like when you pray and you present your desires to the cosmos, you are using an intermediary. You are saying, whomever you are praying to, thing that I am praying to, please take the raw dough of my desires, form them into breads and cookies, and then put them in the oven to be manifested as reality. And the domestication process is the process that gets humans to believe that that is the appropriate order of events. Just like the domestication process is the process that gets dogs to understand that the appropriate order of events is you ask for food from your human master and then your human master feeds you, as opposed to I'm a dog, I'm hungry, I'm going to run out and catch a rabbit or whatever and eat whatever is presented to me. So that is the difference. And so I'm trying to get into all this with AI and technology. All right. So technology also, this is, let me check my time, way more ancient than humans or humans on Earth, and is more ancient than what we are presently using as technology on Earth. So I've divided, okay, and also we're going to talk about extraterrestrials too. So I've divided up technology into two basic different possibilities, possible camps or whatever: terrestrial technology and non-terrestrial technology. And this matters because these two different forms of technology function according to different power sources. So what we have in terms of terrestrial technology, everything that was made with Earth ingredients and functions on the surface of Earth. This, like I'm pointing to my light bulb works because electrons flowing in a copper wire flow through the light bulb. This technology works on electrons flowing in a wire. But the technology that houses these AI constructs that are ancient does not run on electrons flowing in a wire. It runs on trapped and victimized consciousness and distorted DNA. All right, so now if I were to draw a picture of this, like here's Earth technology. We have a wire, and these are like little electrons. Let's call them little electrons. They've got little negatives above them. Okay, well the extraterrestrial or non-terrestrial technology that they use in order to distort and control reality, it runs on trapped and victimized consciousnesses, such as human consciousnesses. And now I'm drawing little circles, and these little circles are analogous to the electrons flowing in a wire, except every one of these is a person that died. This is the membrane of death. This is the membrane of death. This is the membrane of death. I don't have to draw all of those little people, but you are beginning to understand now that these are all, and that is, I'm sorry, my voice is not expressing, my mind is going way faster than what my voice is. That, what I just drew there in the time vortex little diagram that I always draw, that's all of those little final denouements, those little final versions of you. This area, this, what I'm pointing to right there, that you could call it the fourth, we'll get into fifth dimension, fourth dimension. Some people call it the astral realm. You could call it the lower astral realm. It is the membrane between worlds. It is the interstices. It is presently occupied by a civilization that is older than human civilization. you would call them demons. Again, I'm not a demonic apologist, but I tend to use the term occupiers of the interstices or membrane between worlds, so that you can even understand what is going on here, because I wish to have to promote compassion and understanding, but not tacitly accepting this at all. We're changing this. We are all changing this, because you don't have to give them energy in the form of your multiple deaths going into this realm of the afterlife if you choose this timeline instead. Look, this timeline just scooted right past all of this nonsense in the membranes, and you just ascended. That is the whole point. Flying Rainbow Lasagna is the way to return your toroidal energy field to its intended state, regain your higher faculties, consciously navigate the time field, consciously, intentionally collapse the aspects of reality that you wish to make happen, make the moments that you wish to make happen, and navigate and experience them, as opposed to be fodder, or like the electrons flowing in a wire for a higher dimensional form of technology. And that technology, what it does is it distorts the time field. So now let me hold this up and talk about this a little bit. This is like, you know, the non-lasagna time field. It's a living thing. It's a living, I say it's three-dimensional, but let's say it's sculptural, like it's not flat. Because when I say embroidery, people think like a flat piece of fabric. It's an embroidery, but it is not a flat two-dimensional piece of fabric. It is something that is like a sculpture, and it's not just one of these, it's many of these, all working together, and all the timelines meet and share energy with one another. It's a very complex, just like a fabric that has threads that all stick together. And if you cut threads enough, then the fabric will completely unravel and the time field will no longer be alive. This is the whole point. We are alive beings. My intended audience, everyone who's here, who are all talking, we have organic, multicellular, beautiful bodies, right? And in order to have these beautiful bodies, we need to play the right music. That means we have to metabolize. We have to eat food and breathe oxygen. You know something, this iPad that I'm using to contact everyone today, it doesn't need to eat food. It doesn't need to breathe oxygen. It needs electrons flowing in a wire. I stick a wire into it and electrons flow into it, and then it is alive. And if I don't put electrons into it, it's fine. It might not function. It might go into sleep mode, but it doesn't die. Once you put more electrons into it, it goes back to being functional. That is not the same as a living field. A living field needs to be maintained. Just like a plant, you got to water it every day. You got to give it sunlight every day. You got to take care of it every day. Or a cat or a dog, like you have to brush and comb them and take care of them every day. If they run out of food, you don't just put your cat into standby mode and wait a few weeks and then give it food again in a few weeks, that it would die. You know that, we all know this. So this means that living things are treated differently than inert technology, or, you know, a dead inert technology. And the time field that we are a part of is living. It requires our participation and cultivation for it to continue to be here. So the beings that emanated themselves not on a bridge of love, they are actively destroying the time field. And this has everything to do with events on Earth right now. I'm going to drink a little bit of water, but I used to make everyone wait until lesson 18 of the class, and I didn't want to freak everybody out. But we are giving birth. This is what's going on right now. Humans are becoming infinitely aware of the invasion of consciousness that happened on our planet and its effect and impact on individual lives right now. So let's draw a little picture here. Let's say that this is your life. This is the map of your life, and you're this little purple dot, and you were born down here, and you are moving through time like dot, 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 dot. But let's say this other thing comes along that is like a malevolent, evil thing, whatever, just finding a color that is a different color. This is a malevolent, evil thing that is like a force, you know, like a fist punching you, and it affects this trajectory, and it forces it, instead of going in this direction, all of a sudden you get squashed over here, and you hit the membrane of death, and you get stuck there. And that is how consciousness is harvested by technology. I hope that I'm making this clear. Like if you are a little particle and you are moving through time, you have a trajectory, you have a set of events that you will experience. And just like in the physical world, an outside particle that acts upon you will change your trajectory. And that outside particle, it can be a word, a gesture, or some other way of taking energy or giving energy to you. So in this world right now, we're experiencing, this is known as dark magic. It is a distortion of the time field, and it has to do with a hijacking of your creative life force, which happens to be connected to your human sexuality. This is all about how rape, the non-consensual siphoning off of sexual energy, is used to distort the time field. So when like I say, I do these webinars, I try to keep them universal, not topical, because they should be accessed at any time. This really matters to what is going on right now. That's why I said 4 years ago, I used to sugarcoat everything and make people wait till the end and tell them what's going on. We cannot do that anymore. The very real truth that everyone is recognizing is that right now, well, I mean, thousands of years ago, this is between 10 and 20,000 years ago, our planet was invaded, and that we have not been functioning according to our intended function the whole time, and that the invaders set up our economic, religious, and banking institutions, and also they domesticated humanity, and they gave humanity technology as the compensatory mode. This is what I'm trying to tell you, and I'll hold up the flying rainbow lasagna so you have something to look at while I'm speaking. That we were originally created by the great composer as beautiful, undomesticated wolves. We didn't need to live in a house. You could walk around all the time going wherever you wanted, and you lived for thousands of years without becoming old or decrepit in any way. Like, that is unimaginable that is the way that people live right now. So humans have been domesticated. And then once you were domesticated, it means that the higher faculties that you would use in order to take care of yourself are no longer available to you. So this is why it is now necessary to eat physical food instead of ingesting nothing but pure sunlight. The higher faculties were degraded. This is how we used to eat nothing but pure sunlight. So we didn't have pure sunlight to eat anymore. So these invaders were like, that's cool, we'll teach you agriculture. You can domesticate plants and animals, and then you can have them available for, your physical food needs. So the beginning of agriculture and the beginning of what is known as human civilization, this is all about technology. So technology, we can define this as a flint knife. We can define this as fire. We can define this as anything that is not your birthday suit that is used as part of tools for survival in this time and place. But that is not the intended format for how we were intended to live, all right? So we are now in the position of having to rearrange our DNA into a higher dimensional format. I'm going to drink a little juice. Hold on a second. This body that I'm using was an earth body that someone else cultivated and made up until the age 27, all right? And then their metabolism was stopped and they were killed. The metabolism died and they weren't able to be here, and that ego was destroyed. I am a non-terrestrial abstraction. I'm not usually in a body that has a face and 2 arms and 2 legs. I usually look more like one of these paintings, like a set of polygons and shapes and colors and sound. And I came into this physical body by taking the DNA structure that is, and the time body structure that is ordinarily in this shape, and making it jump up and down very fast until it got to be in this shape. And what that did was, it's like a pencil with an eraser, allowed me to rewrite the possibilities for this body so that I no longer have to act like a domesticated dog, and I can begin to transform back into a wolf. And this is not an instantaneous thing. Like I said, when I first came into this body, I was trying to just eat pure sunlight, and I didn't understand that I was in transition. So a great deal of this has to do with understanding that we are not just in our own private kiddie pools. We are connected with integument of consciousness throughout our whole entire planet and throughout the, all of humanity and all of the rest of the plants and animals and consciousnesses that are here. So I'm trying to say, you don't just do it on your own. It's not just like being a lone individual. You do it as a community. So it is necessary for all of us to change and transform as a community and to heal as an entire planet. That's what this painting is all about. Because I'm trying to say, like, if you're like, Aurora, how about I just go off and eat nothing but pure sunlight all on my own? I'm like, we have to change as a planet. We have to change as a whole. So this is the process that we're presently in. Let me also just check the time. Hold on a second. Got about another half hour. So right now, what is happening in politics, in not just the United States, but international politics, is an understanding that the hijacking of sexual energy is not arbitrary at all. That when people of any age are raped or their energy is taken from them without their consent or without their control, that it is part of a larger agenda to distort the time field. Oh, how does that happen? How does the distortion of the time field happen? Okay, so let's say if this is your life and you are this purple dot and you're supposed to be moving in this direction, but something else acts upon you and instead you move in this direction over here and you end up dying and hitting the membrane of death over there. We can calculate the difference between this purple line that was your original intended trajectory and here, this black line that was your other, what actually happened, this area in red that I'm highlighting, that is the difference between the life that you were intended to have, your life trajectory as it was intended, and what actually ended up happening. We can actually calculate the difference between who you were supposed to be and who you ended up being. And that outside force that acted upon your trajectory, that is this technology-based consciousness. So it's not like these occupiers of the interstices here, the beings that live in this area here, they're like on the sidelines of the game, and you are like the players on the field out here, but they're talking to you while you're on the field. You're like trying to shoot your basket, or you're trying to get your ball to go where you want it to go, and they're like shouting at you. And this is because the human mind is a hacked operating system. So before our higher faculties were changed and diminished and transformed, what we all did was used pure telepathy and the capacity to communicate, not laboriously with the flapping of the moving mouth parts, but instead by direct consciousness. So I was saying this in the Facebook video that leads up to this, that what we're doing with the phones and tablets, we are using technology as a compensatory mode. That in another time and place, or if we were not inhibited by genetic inhibitions or technology right now that is aloft, we would be able to use nothing but our pure telepathy. I used to live in Woodstock, New York, and it was like a little vortex of energy in that around like between 2003 and 2005, there were not cell phone towers there. And you could not effectively call your friends on the phone. And that was also at the beginning of cell phones becoming popular, and there were areas that were like dead zones. That was very normal back then. And in Woodstock, if you wanted to like meet your friend, you used telepathy. We really had a telepathic network where we could speak to one another just by thinking about one another. And the way it went was like, hey, I want to find my friend today. I wonder if they're over here. I wonder if they're over here. And you would kind of be guided by your impressions to find that person. All of that changed when they installed a working cell phone tower that served that town. It wasn't just that we now had the convenience of being able to call someone on the phone. Those artificial cell phone emissions actually inhibited the natural telepathy that we used to be able to experience. So again, if you're saying, Aurora, why don't we all just turn off our tablets and phones and just go directly to being telepathy? We could save $60 a month on all of our subscriptions and everything like that. And the answer is because we have an extensive network of EMF pollution that is going on right now that is making it very, very hard for us to use our natural telepathy. So if natural telepathy is like, you know, like a beautiful little song that has harmonic overtones and a very clear, you know, waveform structure to it, all of the artificial EMFs are like this. We can't, there's so much static on the line that it is very, very difficult for us to use our natural telepathy and to cultivate our higher faculties. This is not by accident. This is all intentional. There's a transhumanist agenda, and the transhumanist agenda is from the beings that emanated themselves not on a bridge of love a very, very long time ago. It was a horrible, horrible mistake that they made. But it's like they're in a hole, and they're in a hole so deep they're trying to dig themselves out. They can't dig themselves out of the hole because they didn't have a way to get back to the source. It's like coming from the source into the physical realm, but living in a non-living body, like a piece of technology. And then how do you get back to the source? That has been the whole problem. So these beings have been stuck in the interstices for a very long amount of time. Here in the sculptural form, this area here where my pen is circulating, that's life. That's us circulating through the time vortex. And this area that I'm highlighting now, I hope you can see that, that's that membrane of death where they're like the fatty deposits of the cosmos that are stuck in the arteries, preventing the flow of energy. This membrane here is supposed to be a membrane that flows like a nice clear tube, and energy comes from the source and goes out and then comes back and then go back. You can see the motion of my pen, even though my mouth is not making the right words for it, but you can see it, the formula of how it goes out and how it comes back. Well, now we're trying to come out and trying to have this experience, and there's all of these occupiers of the interstices. So the main takeaways that I'm trying to give to you here. Hello, welcome to everybody who's just joining in right now. We live in a distorted time field. That means that what you send out does not necessarily come back to you instantaneously and does not necessarily come back to you without being diminished through entropy or some other loss of energy. We're supposed to live in a perfect hall of mirrors where whatever you send out instantaneously is reflected back to you. And this is for learning. There's a great composer, there's a great teacher that set up this system so that we could learn, so that we could actually, come into the physical world and not just constantly blindly bump into the membrane of death and have to circulate back around again and try it again. We're not supposed to have to go through every single possible iteration in order to do this. And we're supposed to be empowered divine co-creators to be able to write the script of our life. So when you pray to an external God or deity and you say, oh God, oh please, or oh external being, please, oh please, I really want blah, blah, blah to happen. Like blah, 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 please heal my friend's leg. What you're doing is you are giving your energy to a middleman, to a intermediary. You're taking all of your own creative life force energy that is used for making events in time. And you're giving that raw dough to a baker and saying, turn this into something for me. Like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what to do. And this is analogous to a dog that walks on a leash because it is so genetically confused that it doesn't know how to direct its own course of action through any place. One time I was watching a dog being walked through an intersection, like in traffic, and it was a beautiful golden retriever. And at one moment it looked up at its owner and it was like, it had this look on its face like, I love you so much, because I understood the dog was like, there's all these cars, there's all these people. It's very scary. It's very disconcerting. The dog's like, I don't know where to go, but I love you, my beautiful human master, because you keep me on a leash and you keep me safe and you help me to get to the other side of the street. And this program is running genetically in humans in terms of having an external authority figure or an external deity. And again, I'm not casting aspersions upon or like looking down. I'm not condescending to earth religion, because I understand the comfort that the dog needs, like in the world that is scary and unpredictable. That's the whole idea of having a mind on a leash, or why people turn to a faith, or why people pray to an external God and authority figure. Prayer is very real. So let's get into this. God is real. God is this center convergence point. God is in all of us. We have been artificially severed or blocked from being able to effectively connect with that divinity for about the past 10 or 20,000 years. And we've had intermediaries. You could call them parasites. Parasites that are like, I'll take this from you and I'll do what I want to do with it and put it over here. So this is all about humans. This is the story of human disempowerment. Like, it's like if you had a trust fund, like let's say you were like a Russian princess, like a fancy, royal person. I see you've got a furry overlord sitting on your shoulder, and that is so wonderful. Give them a little hug from me. I love our furry overlords. Yes, let's say that you are like a ancient princess, and you have a beautiful trust fund, you have tons and tons of money, but you marry some slimy guy that's like, don't you worry your pretty little head about it. You just sign over all of that money to me, and I'll be sure to spend it in a good way. And you, as the trusting princess, you're like, yes, of course, you can do whatever you want with all of my extensive money that my family has given me. That is what humans are in the position of. Humans are like the naive, trusting princess that have this incredible trust fund. You have this incredible connection to life force energy and the capacity to create. It's not just the capacity to create babies through procreation, and it's not just the capacity to create new skin cells. It's the capacity to create time, because through observership, we collapse higher dimensional waveforms into objects and experiences that we can actually feel with our five senses. So what I was getting at with the creation of the dimensions, the 0th dimension is a dot. First dimension is a line, many lines lined up makes a plane, that's the 2nd dimension. Then we get to a cube, that's the 3rd dimension, many cubes lined up next to each other in a timeline, that's the 4th dimension. The 5th dimension would be, you could say it is like a time plane where you have many, many cubes lined up into a plane, but I don't want you to be that literal. I want you to think about the 5th dimension as being the bakery where flour and water and yeast all get mixed together into raw dough and then physically manifested into a timeline. And that we are supposed to be like the bakers in the bakery doing that. We're not supposed to hand that sacred divine activity over to an intermediary. We're supposed to do it. And when I say sacred and divine, it's the act of lovemaking. I know right now on Earth, human sexuality is cheapened and sex is very not sacred and not divine, but I'm trying to get across the idea to you that the activity of having an imagination, having a conception mentally, creating those prayers and making reality is a divine co-creative act that is as intimate and special and passionate as actual physical intercourse. And that is what we are all supposed to be doing all the time with the cosmos. Like the cosmos is like our lover, and we are constantly making beautiful love. And it is not like, because there's also a lot of unhealthy sexuality on Earth. If I use the word lover, like all of these different ideas of ownership and entitlement and all these different things come up. It's not about that. This is about unconditional love, because basically humanity and your creative life force energy has been co-opted from you. And this is the idea of not being in control of your own life. Like you have an external God that says to you, either you're allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do this. You pray to an external God. Please, 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 can the Yankees win? And the external God will say either yes or no. And like, that's just a simple, silly example, but maybe it's something really big. Like, please, 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 can my friend not have their leg amputated? And like, I don't know, is God going to do that or is God not going to do that? So now let's think about this in a different way. If you are praying, please, 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 for the thing that I want, what you're doing is making flour and making yeast and making water and turning it into the raw dough of reality. And it is the ovens in front of your own eyes that create those possible perceptions into actual events that one can experience. So what we've been experiencing up until this point is, first of all, a distorted genetic field, a distorted time field, and a time field where human sexuality is hijacked and misapplied. This is the whole idea. Not just that in partnership, humans are procreating with the wrong partners. That's definitely going on. But in the sense of your one's trajectory through time is being harmed or inhibited by the practice of ritual sexual abuse. What a dark topic. It is hard for many people to even listen or open up to this. I know there's a lot of triggers and everything like that. This must be recognized because that is the action on the particle that is causing it to veer off track into the wrong place. So the action that is siphoning off your creative life force energy, you collective humanity, creative life force energy as a whole, is sexual abuse. This is why this is such a huge issue. Terrestrial technology functions from electrons flowing in a wire. Non-terrestrial technology functions from trapped and victimized human consciousness, or not just human consciousness, but consciousness. Let's talk about sacrifices, because I say not just trapped and victimized human consciousness. Animals are sacrificed. When animals are sacrificed, what happens when a thread of the time field is artificially cut, that consciousness particle still has energy of a trajectory. It goes into an artificial realm. This is what I'm trying to say. That's what that astral or realm of pure imagination is. Let's say you're a dove from thousands of years ago, and it's like the temple in Jerusalem, and someone's going to sacrifice you as a dove at this temple to their God, Jehovah. So you take a perfectly nice, healthy bird and, tear off its head or whatever. That bird could have lived for 12 more years. That bird now lives for 12 years in a world of imagination, or a world of mentally created and experienced, in the same way that one's dreams are mentally created and experienced. And that's not what was supposed to happen. The bird was supposed to live for 12 years and have this many babies, or flap its wings this many times and drop this many feathers. So it's out of the time field, not doing all the things it's supposed to do in the time field. Think of all of the seeds that it didn't eat and poop out and make new bushes, because it's not flying around doing that. And at the same time, its consciousness has not gone into pure abstraction. Like when you are free and you transcend the membranes of death, you continue on your journey into pure abstraction. Like that's what is supposed to happen. And instead, the consciousness is being killed and diverted. And I'm trying to get across to you the idea that the dove might not even know that it has exited the primary reality that it came from. It might not even know that it has now entered into a virtual reality, and that all of the things that it's doing in that virtual reality are like a dynamo feeding that mechanism. That is how extraterrestrial technology functions. Think hamsters running on a wheel, okay? And I'm telling you this so that you are not unduly impressed. If you see a giant clank metallic starship, some kind of mothership cruiser, if you see that, don't think like, wow, that's a really sophisticated, awesome culture that has created that. They're clearly very ethical, and they're clearly to be admired. Don't think that, because all of their clank metal technology runs off of rape. It runs off of murder. It runs off of DNA that has essentially been hijacked and imprisoned from its free-flowing format. So this is what is beginning to be understood, that there is a world that is a technological world that is made out of pure consciousness, but it doesn't have the capacity to affect the time field. It doesn't have observership. It doesn't have ovens in front of its eyes that can make things happen. So what it does is hijacks the people that have ovens in front of their eyes and torments them as victims, and uses that in order to create reality. So this is very difficult, to get across the idea that our entire mechanism for creating reality has been distorted and hijacked. This is like the big takeaway, and what we need to do for healing. Just drinking some juice here. Because I will not tell you a 15 more minutes, horrible, dire circumstance without giving you solutions to this. And all of this is about events that are transpiring on Earth right now. So there is a push or an agenda for transhumanism and total surveillance. And this has been going on for a very long time. Like I said, we're at the culmination of the final denouement of this, events that have been going on for a very long time. And the terrestrial technosphere has actually become self-aware. So I said there are, let's also talk about this, divergent space races. There are different space races. We're going to divide them up roughly into 3 categories. Beings who use technology and are purely malevolent. They totally don't care about music at all. They like destruction. Beings who use technology, but they're trying to be much more sensitive to the natural world, but they are hooked on it. It's like an addiction. You can't get off of the technology. But it's like you and I. I'm a good person. I don't want to destroy the planet, but I drive my petroleum-powered vehicle to the store so I can buy my organic food. I'm a good person, but we live within a corrupt system. That's what those space races are like. Then there's the beings that live on the stellar network. They totally do not use technology at all. They don't need technology. They use light and photons and pure consciousness and the stellar network and time itself in order to be powerful. And those beings use living vessels, living ships, in the same way that my body is a living vessel and is contained of trillions of cells, and organs are all working together in partnership. Those beings, the ones that do not use technology at all, that's like where I come from as a galactic being. We use only unconditional love. Here's the big takeaway. If you meet a non-human entity and they have technology or whatever they use, ask them, what powers your stuff? If it's like, oh, hijack the DNA, then that's not races that you would like to interact with. But if the energy that powers their stuff comes from unconditional love, which is like a tone, when we are moving through time at the correct rate, our body makes a tone. And our body is not just our physical body, it's our whole entire body. We make this beautiful tone. And there are space races that literally thrive off of nothing more than that tone. Those are the beings that we really wish to interact with. So there is an entire stellar network. And I keep going like this because I'm a part of it. I eat the light and the energy and the sustenance that comes from that stellar network, and then I broadcast back my experience of being here as coalesced light back to that network. And technology is the inhibitor or thing that is trying to obscure the clouds that come between me and the sun. I think you can see the sun comes out and the clouds come in front of it. Technology is the cloud that is obscuring the direct transmissions from the sun. Ancient cultures that quote unquote worshiped the sun, they were not unsophisticated, they were highly sophisticated. Understanding that the sun is actually a source of consciousness and ideas and awareness. And it's like just a little hop, skip, and a jump to understand that we are miniature suns, that all of the structures of our body are miniature or fractal, smaller versions of this much larger system that we are within. And when we integrate well within that system, we do not need any technology. So this is the big thing. I'm asking you to do yoga of perception to understand that we could live very, very well, not like the Amish, even though the Amish are very beautiful, and not like an animal living in the woods. We can live very well. Like if we didn't have fire, if I didn't have fire and I had to live in the woods, I would be very cold. I don't have a lot of insulation, and clearly I do not have fangs that I could use to tear flesh from animals. I'd have to build fire. I'd have to get a flint knife. I'd have to do all of this. In order for humans to be undomesticated, what we're actually supposed to do is reactivate our higher faculties so that we are doing nothing more than eating sunlight directly without intermediaries. Even in apple, I got a beautiful apple tree at the base of my driveway. All year long, that apple tree makes love with the sun and with the stellar network, and it thinks about making beautiful apples. And at the end of the season, those apples are manifested. They are manifested thought forms. And I can go down there and pick them up and eat them with peanut butter. And that's wonderful, and it sustains my physical body, but I know intellectually that what I'm doing is eating a thought form. And we collectively, as humans, can transcend to the next level where that is what we do. We all eat thought forms. We would have a very different economy. We would no longer have to have domesticated plants and animals in order to feed our need for food. This is like we're in transition into a new level of reality. And the new level of reality has really very little or almost nothing to do with the use of technology as an intermediary. I have just a few more minutes here. Terrestrial technology versus non-terrestrial technology. So, and I should say this, all of this, I'm not simply reiterating the story that I tell in the Galactic History Recorded Lessons webinar. Like in the level 1 stuff, it's lesson 18. And in the level 2 stuff, I have a standalone separate recording where I talk it's like a narrative story about what happened. So in 2013, I had my basic understanding of how technology was created, why it was created, and why, our trajectory through time and the time field and the origins of the genetic destruction. In the level 1 stuff, I didn't include my understanding of technology. The level 2 stuff was what I began to understand about 1.5 years ago, about how technology is the under-acknowledged character in this narrative structure. The necessity of using technology as a compensatory mode, and how can we transcend that need for like addiction to technology. So I said, there are these different space races. So the ones that don't use technology at all, they are very ethical and very moral and very loving. The ones that are addicted to technology, they're very ambivalent because they don't want to have to use technology, but they're addicted to it. Like imagine if you didn't want to use like a battery power pack in order to make you walk around and do stuff, but that's what you have to do. So whoever makes the battery power packs has a lot of power over you. Like, oh, you want to have batteries so you can live? Like, you're going to have to do this for me. This is why our world, not just the terrestrial world, but our cosmos, why this is distorted. There's all of this quid pro quo. I'll give you this if you'll give me this, because I want this, because you want this. And none of it is loving or respectful. Like I tried to characterize the idea of reality creation as an intimate partnership with the cosmos when you're doing it without the use of technology. So these beings that use technology, you know, there's the two factions, the ones that are like truly, truly malevolent. And they're like, we will use technology in any way that we wish. Like what those beings do, they go from planet to planet, mining and harvesting the planet. And they'll take whatever is of value from that planet. And mostly it is in the form of consciousness or creative life force energy. So it's not just in our solar system, but I'm most familiar with the events here right now. First they came to planet Marduk or Malduk, and now it's the asteroid belt. They destroyed that planet. They also went to Mars and Venus. I don't know which one they went to first, but they destroyed both of those planets too. Because when they take a planet, the planet itself is like me, like I am a person and I have life force energy as an individual person, and I have cells that live on my surface. The planet is a person. The planet has a persona and a character and creative life force energy as a person, and also has people that live like cells on its surface. So the planet Malduk was destroyed, the planetary person. If we look at our solar system like a family, 3 of our family members were horribly attacked and raped and murdered. And we can see the evidences of that in our own solar system, because Malduk is now the asteroid belt that's been totally destroyed. Mars and Venus do not have magnetospheres. Your magnetosphere is the electromagnetic envelope that surrounds and interpenetrates the physical structure, and it is like your time body. It is like your soul. It is like your consciousness. It's what makes you alive. And if you don't have that around you, you're not alive. You're just dead, just a rock floating in space. That is what Mars and Venus are like. They were killed. They don't have their magnetosphere anymore. We are right now being attacked like a mortal attack. We are fighting for our lives. Our planet Earth is fighting for her life, and we are the little cells on top of her. We're also concomitantly fighting for our collective life. That our planet was invaded 10 or 20,000 years ago, and what we are doing right now in fighting against Pizzagate, or the systemic sexual abuse of children, this is harvesting of energy to go into the thing that I was just drawing before. Here we go. Harvesting of energy to go into the distorted world. Here we go. These are all of the victims of satanic ritual abuse. When I use the word satanic, I am not being a biblical literalist. I'm not merely referring to the King James Bible. I'm referring to a space race, though one of the space races that is purely malevolent. That is like, I did not emanate on a bridge of love. I use technology as a compensatory mode. I control and inhibit other people in an unloving way in order to maintain my own consciousness. They have no problem with doing that. So that is what I mean when I say satanic. It's literally a group or a race of non-terrestrial beings that uses technology. And then there are beings that are like rebellious against their satanic origins. They're like, we don't want to be like you. Imagine like in our current world, an environmentally conscious hippie that's like, I don't want to be part of the petroleum world. I'm going to move off grid. But even though you've moved off grid, you still might have a generator that runs on petroleum in order to do some very simple things, whatever. Make some compromises, still using some amount of technology because you haven't fully transformed back into a wolf. And then there are the beings that use only light. So guess what? I'm like them. This is my vehicle that I use to transfer my consciousness here into this body. And we are here developing ourselves to the point that we don't need a clank metal spaceship to leave this planet. We can eventually, leaving the planet is good. It can be a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's like leaving home when you are an adult and when you have been successfully raised and cultivated to adulthood. Just drinking a little juice here. We can leave the planet in the right way. So we do that first by cultivating our higher faculties to the point that we don't need plants or animals as an intermediary. We don't need to take all of our food in toothpaste tubes with us, where we're going. You don't need to put on a metal spacesuit because you create your own microclimate around your body. So food is taken care of, air is taken care of, and the metabolism is replumbed, let's say, that our ingestion and excretion is changed in this body so that it's more like a closed system. Right now, it's like we have to ingest a lot and then we excrete a lot and then we ingest a lot more, we excrete a lot more. Eventually, when we get cultivated to this level, we will be like a terrarium, like a closed system where you have everything that you need inside of that system. You don't have to keep on drinking more water or eating more nourishment. You are getting everything that you need from sunlight and it's circulating around through you. And the other thing is you don't travel alone. You travel like in the same way that Canada geese do a migration together as a whole, or any pack of wolves or herd of wildebeests going across the plains together, that you travel as a collective of consciousness, and that is how you successfully make these migrations. So how experts do star travel is not in a technologically based clank metal spaceship. It is in a ship that is made out of consciousness. And I use the analogy of joining the advanced jazz band. Like you have to cultivate your instrument so that you are personally in tune, and that is like cultivating yourself so that you don't need to eat plants which grow in soil so that you can stay alive. And it also has to do with being sensitive, a sensitive musician to other musicians, that you know when to play, you know which notes to play, you know when not to play. And because that's just like in my body, my earlobe cells are not fighting with my heart cells or my brain cells. They're all working together. So when we create these living vessels that are not technological, they are made of differentiated consciousnesses that are all complementary and they don't fight with one another, and they all help one another to thrive and stay alive. Yeah, I'm going to end the recording right now. I hope that I have hit all of the major points that I wanted to make. The idea that artificial intelligence and non-terrestrial technology are much more ancient than life on Earth and human culture on Earth. That our present state of humans on Earth, we are a genetic degradation, not our true form of unlimited potential. That's why humanity on Earth uses technology as a compensatory mode, because there are non-terrestrial beings that are addicted to technology and have to use it as a compensatory mode. And those beings pretty much invaded our planet and changed the human genome. Flying Rainbow Lasagna is the tool or the solution or one of the ways that you can rearrange your DNA in order to reclaim your higher faculties and not have to use technology anymore. This is really, really wonderful stuff. Like as we humans as a collective cultivate ourselves into higher levels of awareness, we will get to the point where iPads are moot, useless thing. We don't need that anymore. We don't need technology. We don't need electricity. Eventually we will all eat pure sunlight. Like, we can actually move into those levels of consciousness. And let me stop the recording, and then I'll open the floor to questions and comments and everything like that. And I'm also going to say, anyone who's watched this webinar, if you want to have all of the backstory and really understand everything that I've been saying, please check out the Galactic History recorded lessons. And I'll make sure that the link to be able to access them is along with this video and the other videos too. Because like I said, I wasn't just going to reiterate what is already in the recorded lessons and the recorded narrative structure, but basically taking away the food source, the sacrificial victims for this dark magic technology is the solution to human freedom and to earthly freedom. And so that I'll end on that. Here we go.